How to Read English. How to Read English, and a previous episode of the podcast, How to Read English, I explained Stephen Krashen's theory of comprehensible input, the idea that we learn languages by reading and listening to things we understand. If you haven't listened to that episode, I strongly advise you go back and listen to it first. You can find it at English Spoken Stories. The information is this episode really builds upon that one. Builds upon means that the information in this episode continues from the last episode. It's like when you build a house, you have to have a first floor to build a second floor on top. So today I'm going to explain how you can teach a language. Now this is mainly for people who want to teach their language to a partner or a friend. For example, I have a friend who is Latvian, but there aren't many resources for learning Latvian, so he's teaching his partner himself, but he's not a professional teacher. And the advice I would give to teachers is a bit different to the advice I would give to someone teaching a partner or a friend. If you are a language teacher, you will still find this episode useful, but I would recommend looking for more detailed resources. Fortunately, there are lots of blogs, podcasts, and Facebook groups for CI. CI means comprehensible input. For CI teaching, and TPRS, the storytelling technique I talked about last time, if you're not sure where to start. I really recommend a podcast called Why You Must Read English, which you can find at my channel. A fantastic teacher and researcher into second language acquisition. But I think I probably have more listeners who want to teach a partner or a friend than listeners who are teachers. And maybe the experience of teaching a partner or a friend will make you want to be a language teacher. That would make me very happy, but to make sure I don't give advice that doesn't actually work. Before recording this episode, I decided to teach a bit of Esperanto to my ex-girlfriend, Artoria. If you don't know, Esperanto is a constructed language designed by a Polish man in the 19th century for international communication. I don't want to spend too much time explaining it here, as it doesn't affect the advice I'm giving so much. But if you're interested, I did a previous episode called The Boy Who Hoped, where I talked all about it. You can listen to it at English Spoken Stories. The first and most important thing when teaching a language is use the target language as much as possible. The target language is the language that you're teaching. So when I taught Esperanto to Artoria, Esperanto was the target language. When we had classes, I tried to use Esperanto as much as possible, yes. Even though we live together, we did classes. You might think it would be a good idea to do all your regular conversations, but in the target language instead. And when your student gets to a high enough level, you can definitely do this. But beginners will get tired very easily, and they can lose motivation if they never get a proper break. So I recommend either having specific language days or set class times. The reason we want to stay in the target language is to get as much comprehensible input as possible, and that is the key. It needs to be comprehensible. Speaking fluent Chinese to someone won't help. if they don't understand a single word you're saying. So how do you make yourself comprehensible? Well, there are three main ways: speaking slowly, grading your language, and using aids like translation, drawing, or gestures. Grading your language means changing it so that it is at a certain level, and an aid is something that helps you do something. These first two methods, speaking slowly and grading your language, are more difficult than you might think. When someone doesn't know a language at all, almost everything is new to them. They don't even know where the spaces between words are when you speak. So you need to talk really slowly and try to make your sentences as simple as you can. Think of how you might talk to a baby or a very young child. If a baby looks hungry, you don't say, "Hey, what are you feeling like eating?" You say, "Are you hungry? Do you want to eat? Do you want to eat pasta, pizza, maybe you want milk?" Obviously, your student isn't a baby, and they will understand more than a baby would, but you should try to talk in a similar way. Ask lots of simple yes, no questions. Use obvious words that are cognates, words that sound similar to your shared language. For example, pizza in German sounds similar to the English word pizza, so if I was teaching someone German, I could probably say that, and they would understand as long as I was speaking slowly enough to show you an example of how much speaking slowly and using cognates can do. I'm going to speak a bit of Japanese. I've deliberately written a few sentences with lots of English cognates. First, I'll speak quickly, and you see if you understand anything. Then I'll say it at the speed I would use with a beginner learner. Most likely you didn't understand the full meaning of that, but you probably understood at least a few words that second time. The first time you might have felt stressed and nervous, or maybe you understood so little that you didn't pay attention. By the way, if you're curious, the meaning of the Japanese was computers are cool technology. You can do all kinds of things like play video games and edit documents. I'm thinking of giving a computer to Brian as a Christmas present. Okay, so what about other raids? Translation is very easy, but you shouldn't use it too much because it takes time away from speaking the target language. Also, there is no such thing as a perfect translation between two languages. If a student gets used to translating all the time, it becomes very hard to understand more complicated language later on. Gestures and pictures are both great aids, though, and I encourage you to use them as much as possible. If you say the word eat, mime eating something with your hands. Miming is when you pretend to do something. So if I mimed eating, I would pretend to pick up some food and put it in my mouth. You can be quite creative with gestures and miming. If you say the word where, you can look around the room like you are looking for something, or if you say basketball, you can mime playing basketball. Here is a video that outlines some useful gestures. Another great method is to draw pictures to explain meaning, and this can make things really fun. If you don't enjoy drawing, finding pictures from the internet to explain the meaning of a word is fine too. The only problem is if you're going to download pictures, then you might have to prepare them before talking about something because it can be hard to find a picture that shows exactly what you mean. For example, let's say you want to explain the word car. If you look up pictures of cars, they might have other things in them, roads, other cars, trees, and so on. So the student might not understand if the picture means car or driving or road and so on. This is why I prefer drawing and gestures. Here is an example of good use of drawing to do a story listening. It's also important to think about the physical space you are teaching. Physical means something that is real, something that is solid. For example, a table is physical, but an idea or a dream is not physical. So when I talk about the physical space, I mean the real space inside your house, the rooms, the furniture, and so on. Classrooms are designed for teaching, but houses are not. Classrooms have blackboards or whiteboards, computers, and useful locations, and the rooms are designed for one person to teach to a group of people. Think about what things will be useful to you. Do you want to write lots of words down on a whiteboard? Do you want to create a word wall, a wall with posters that have useful common words written on them along with translations? Do you want to show your students songs and videos? Or do you want to mainly teach through activities like cooking and cleaning? The word wall I created for teaching. Artoria, you might not have space for a big whiteboard in your house, but you could sit on the sofa and write on paper or type on your computer and use a projector to show it on the wall. A projector is a piece of technology that you connect to your computer and shows your computer screen on the wall as a large image.